Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, part 2 of the SAP on Azure Webinar Series, running SAP in the public cloud, driving business and IT transformation with Microsoft Azure. Today's event is entitled An IT Leader's Perspective on IT Transformation, Migrating SAP Systems in the Cloud, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Microsoft. My name is Steve Paul. I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenters, and later in the program we'll ask for your feedback. This webinar also contains audience polling. Please complete the polls when they appear, and thanks in advance for your participation. You can participate in our Q&A session by asking questions about the information presented in this webinar at any time. Just type your question into the Q&A text box located below the speaker bios on the left, and then click the Submit button. We'll answer as many questions as time permits after our presentation. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event, and you can download a PDF copy of our presentation by clicking on the resource box on the bottom left of our console. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. And if you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the Help ? Icon on the bottom right of our console. If slides are not advancing, please press the F5 key on your keyboard to refresh your browser. And now on to our presentation, An IT Leader's Perspective on IT Transformation, Migrating SAP Systems in the Cloud. Discussing today's topic will be Ashvin Sanghvi, Principal Program Manager, R&D Compute with Microsoft, and Anand Raval, Senior Manager, SAP Analytics with Accenture Digital. First, we'll hear from Ashvin.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. Just quickly about what we're going to cover today. We'll just start with what is this urgency, why now, for transformation of IT, how this has, what are the choices you had up till now, and what are the pros and cons. Then we'll dive deeply into the features, functions that are relevant to most of your major concerns. And then I'll hand it over to Accenture for a real live experience story. So before I begin, just a bit about myself. I've been in the business since the 80s, and I've, throughout my career, built infrastructure and management products for mission-critical backends, data centers, and so on. So let's dive right into it. Why the urgency to transform? And why now? And I think the best way to explain this is by conversation with one of my customers. He told me that about 15 years ago, when he joined his company as a CIO, the top of mind concerns of the CEO are still the same. And what were they? The first one he said was the CEO said, Peter, the first thing I want to focus on is do not keep your data on an island. Make sure that everybody in the company has access to data to make objective decisions. The second thing I wanted to make sure was that the data was not stale. It was connected to operations in as close to real time as possible for making that happen. And then, of course, the third big ask was, help me innovate faster. He says, we have the best, the company was not a very high-tech company, and they said, we have the best, brightest, most well-paid people in IT, and in fact, IT has become the bottleneck in getting new products or processes out. In fact, he was saying that the main way by which we are removing things from our backlog are because they've been in the backlog for too long and they're not relevant anymore. And then, of course, the last one was we need to be agile. Some of the best plans that we have today, they change on a dime. And the way he explained that was interesting. He says, Peter, I'm asking you to build an aircraft carrier, not an airport. We should be able to turn on a dime. So this is kind of the things that were constant. And then more recently, they basically see that, hey, what is our meaningful cloud strategy, right? That is the ask. So these have been kind of, high on the list items for the longest time. So my question to Peter was, so what is taking you so long? And, his answer was, we have urgent issues and we have important issues. And the urgent issues have always taken priority. And what makes him kind of angry over time is that things wouldn't even be urgent if he was already in the cloud. Like, the urgent items were a new compliance or buying hardware or opening a data center. These wouldn't even have been his concern, but he never gets around doing that. So here's the good news. The good news is that I think the stars have aligned because the urgent has also become important or vice versa. As people realize that all of this requires a transition to the cloud, and at the same time, they're looking at the deadline of 2025 when they need to be fully running on HANA. And these two are not two independent products or projects. These are something that they need to think about it together. And as a result, this is kind of a forcing function that makes it finally possible. And it is amazing, when there is no dilemma, the choice is clear, all the bridges are burnt but one, how things align within your companies to make that transition. So that's the good news. Of course, the other flip side of it is there isn't much time. Large companies take a long time before they fully transition over. We've had the same experience here inside Microsoft. It's been a long time. And finally, we are 100% in the cloud, running our internal IT. So you need to get started and started fast. So what are your options is really what you want to look at. And it's 2018 now, so I wouldn't spend time, telling you that your final destination must be the hyperscale cloud. That's very, very clear. I don't think there's any confusion in terms of, what is a cloud. All the cloud washing ruses you see through it very, very clearly. So, the hosting solution or any of those solutions are not a cloud. You understand that? Even the debate on security, I would say, closed out sometime early last year, where it was very clear that because of everything, the talent and everything else involved, the investments involved, it is more secure to be in the cloud than even on-prem. So that's not an issue. And really, as a result of that, we see the results of people who've already started moving NetWeaver or have moved NetWeaver production environments into the hyperscale cloud, as we see it from our own install base on Azure. So they're getting the benefits of the agility, the elasticity, and so on in the cloud. But one thing that is different about the SAP HANA database itself is it is not really built for the cloud. It requires a more, a specific hardware, large scale, and so on. And that has been a challenge for until recently on what do you do with that, because everything around it, the landscape application servers, the surrounding applications, they all benefit from these cloud features. But it is the database itself for large enterprises, which turns out to be pretty large footprint. This has been an issue. And we will cover in a little bit further detail as to what, the pros and cons, but the choices that they're looking at when they run into that issue is either they go back to thinking of on-premises SAP HANA appliances, or, especially if they don't know how to architect that, or if they even need help in running it, they're thinking about managed services, or at least the other two other approaches they're looking at, or they're looking at still trying to run it in a general purpose hyperscale cloud. And we'll get into the further details, but basically there are challenges in all of these three approaches. And the only thing that we've seen work is go to a hyperscale cloud, which has got features in there that are purpose-built for SAP HANA and these overall landscapes. And that's what we will drill down in the second part of this conversation. But before we go further, I'll have Steve go through some of these polling questions. So here you go, Steve.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple of poll questions we'd like to ask our audience. Just quickly here, does your organization run any SAP environments on the public cloud? So quite simply, just respond yes, no, or perhaps you don't know. And we'll tabulate your responses and share the results with the audience in a few moments. Ashwin, what's your experience? What do you think the breakdown may be on this?
In terms of NetWeaver, we see a lot of customers already in there, in the public cloud. So if they have not transitioned, it is probably for some other reasons that large enterprises have in terms of just how fast you can move to the cloud. So let's see how mainstream or aggressive this audience is.
Okay, great. And also want to remind our audience that we'll be taking questions at the conclusion of the webcast, so get those in as soon as possible. Here's the results of our first poll, and well, looks like probably about 2/3 to 1/3 right now are saying no, not as yet.
Yeah, this is fairly typical. This is typical. I wouldn't say this is aggressive, because it's been a while. It's been about a few years since people have started moving NetWeaver into the public cloud, and we see very, very large installations with that. So very mature, big installations. So this is, I would say, a little bit less aggressive.
Okay, thank you. And here's our second poll question, and here we'd just like to know how much memory do you need for your SAP environment, combined data place plus working space? Would you need less than 2 terabytes, 2 to 6, 6 to 24, or perhaps more than 24? And again, we'll tabulate this information and share it with the rest of our audience, so we greatly appreciate your participation in our polls. Again, Ashwin, with this one, what kind of numbers do you typically see?
So on this one here, we've been surprised to the upside. So what we thought would be mainstream is we were wrong there, and we see more folks on the higher end. And typically it is because they've first estimate their current size based on whatever compression they'll get from whatever they're coming from, Oracle or SQL or DB2. But then what they realize is they're seeing a pretty big growth almost on a monthly basis of about 100 gigs. And so they're looking for a bit of headroom, and that puts them in that larger size category. The other thing we've seen is some of the customers have, over the years, because of acquisitions and so on, have got fragmented SAP installations, and they're looking at this opportunity to consolidate, and that turns out to larger installations.
Okay, thank you. Let's see the results, and then you can resume your presentation. And looks like, well, about 40% are saying in that 2 to 6 terabyte sweet spot.
Okay, this is interesting. I would say the first 3 bars that we have are what we've experienced up till now. The greater than 24 terabyte, we've got about a handful of customers asking for that, and this number here is at 18%. So I would say, you surprised me once again.
Okay, well, let's move on with your presentation. Back over to you.
Okay, so this is just a summary of my experiences with CIOs that, rubber meets the road kind of thinking around making this transition. So first thing what happens is, in many companies, there are different teams maybe doing finance or ERP or what have you, maybe on a separate line of products. And they're just thinking of it as a micro project, all said and done. And the CIO is thinking that I can have a multi-cloud strategy, something in Cloud 1, something in Cloud 2, something on-prem, and it can all work. But as they actually start looking at an architecture, they realize that no, they need to really have a single cloud solution because of data gravity and consistency and management and so on. So at that point in time, generally the decision was higher up in the company. Probably the CIO himself is pretty hands-on in that decision making. And instead of the features and functions kind of thing, the question becomes more of a strategic question. As somebody said, we suddenly realize we're not dating, we're looking for a life partner, we're getting married here. So that's when they look at those the 4 boxes at the bottom. These are more strategic kind of questions. So first one, of course, is this a leader in the cloud? And, the number 1, number 2 makes a big choice, big difference compared to anybody else. Next one they would ask is enterprise in their DNA? Okay, versus it is something that is, changed with the company from consumer focus or what have you, because it matters in how you sell and support and so on. The third big question is, what is their relationship with SAP? Why is this important? Because people have burned in the past with not thinking through about this. An example comes to mind, which is people who would have big investments in Oracle and trying to get to the cloud, and they're running into a problem. So this is really, something that is top of mind that people are thinking about. And fourth, I think everybody realizes, probably you folks do too, given the urgency, given the short time before 2025 is right upon you, there is going to be a stampede in this direction. And there is a shortage of talent, of people who can help you make this transition. So you want to have a pretty broad SI ecosystem that can help you and is knowledgeable. So these are kind of the top of mind concerns that people have. And then once they find a partner that basically meets this set of strategic requirements, then you get down to the next level of nitty-gritty. And that's where I talk about this circle and the sum of all fears, right? This is all the things that are concerning. And I've drawn it in the form of a circle is because they are opposing forces. So you've got solutions that may have a good solution for one of the arrows, but will fail on the other one, okay? And here's where we get back to the alternative conversations. So let's say, the customer says, well, I definitely want to go to S4 and BW4. I want to go to the next generation of applications on HANA. But at the same time, it's going to take me 4 years to transit, and I'll have a bunch of stuff running on SQL or DB2 or Oracle or what have you on NetWeaver, and I need these things to be side by side in the same cloud. And what you'll see is you'll have things like some managed services that will give you a good solution maybe for HANA, but will not support the older databases or will not be certified for it. Same thing for some of the new cloud players. So these are the two opposing forces that you need an answer to. And it's not an or, but you want an and. The next one is, hey, my sizes, like you folks said, hey, my sizes are so big. 18 terabytes, 24 terabytes, even 10 terabytes. And I don't have a solution like that in the cloud. So I then land up, buying a appliance and so on. At the same time, you want cloud economics, and that's what you don't get when you put that other thing on-prem. Plus, you don't get the elasticity to grow as you need. Plus, you don't get the main reason you wanted to get to the cloud, which is the agility in developing new products surrounding this, HANA estate, and agility in operations. So again, you're asked to choose one or the other. Similarly, we've got people who want this agility in terms of operations, but at the same time, they want to not at all have any issues with business continuity, right? And this is one of those things that is, you can have a very rigid set of topologies and processes to get you the business continuity, but then you will not have the operations agility. So that's kind of, another stress point. Same thing with security and app dev agility. So these are the kind of the opposing forces that you want to kind of look at it as a whole. So, and this was the genesis of our strategy. We recognized this about 2 to 3 years ago, and we basically said, okay, this means we need a different approach for how you do this, and this is the genesis of the purpose-built features that we talk about. But before that, let's just answer these other questions, which is the strategic questions. So first, hyperscale clouds and leadership in there. So I think now it is clear, it's been again a while, now it's clear that this market has really got 2.5 layers, AWS, Azure, and whoever is the third player, the half player, and that may change over time. And the top two keep growing at the expense of that third one. So that's kind of the dynamics in there. So that kind of narrows down the choice. And then the second one, of course, is the enterprise focus, and I think it's pretty clear. Microsoft has always been an enterprise-focused company. It's in our DNA. And then, of course, this relationship with SAP, and I don't know whether it's as clear to everybody as to how multifaceted, how old and deep this relationship is. So we've been working with SAP for decades now. We have 80 to 90% overlap in our customers. We are each other's, one of the largest customers. So Microsoft is the only hyperscale cloud provider that runs all their internal functions on top of SAP. And similarly, SAP, takes some of their mission-critical internal applications and run them on Azure. Plus, we have a joint marketing and sales relationship, and we have an engineering relationship. We have engineers in Waldorf, and joint support. So multifaceted in that way. Plus, multiple products connect. So we have an Office 365 integration, we have analytics integration, and Azure, and single sign-on for Active Directory. So lots and lots of things that we do together. So now let's I think we basically talked about the concerns. Now I'm just going to drill down deeper into each one of those areas and how we resolve that without having to make you, decide between one or the other. So we'll take all of those points one after another and go really deep into each one of them. Okay. So the first one is what is this strategy of a purpose-built hyperscale cloud for SAP? So really, because of these opposing forces, we had to take a two-pronged approach. There is a limit to which you can do things with virtual machines in terms of scale, while have a whole bunch of other benefits. And the limit of the size can keep changing and keep growing, but there's always a space beyond that you cannot do with VMs. So you also need a purpose-built bare metal offering, but in the cloud. So both of these are in the cloud, purchase in the same fashion and have the same proximity to all the other cloud services that you have, that you need for running the landscapes and applications. So here you see, we go all the way up till 60 TB or 5760 vCPUs. Think about them as, when I said threads, it's vCPUs. And that's kind of your area that you cover. And remember when I said that you need to think about your whole landscape here, right? It's not a environment by environment decision. So your smallest and your largest system should be runnable in the cloud, and your oldest and the newest, and your OLAP and the OLTP. So all of that needs to be covered within this thing here, and that basically expands that envelope that need to be satisfied in a single location. So, and while we do this thing here, the bare metal systems that we have are so purpose-built that we don't even run, let's say, SQL on it. They are CPU, memory, core, I/O, all of that, and some features are purpose-built for HANA deployments. So now, what does that offer? First, of course, is we have the largest single node scale up for OLTP. That's 20 terabytes, 20 sockets, the largest machine that you have in the hyperscale cloud. And then even for OLAP, we have an 8-socket, 4 terabyte system. So it's certified to run all 4 terabytes in the cloud. And you can scale out, and our scale out can go do N plus M on that. So that's kind of your overall scale conversation, but that is not it. It's not all about the biggest thing. We also want, our customers want to right size their installation. So if you see that little graph on the right-hand corner, it basically lays out all the SKUs that we have, and there are so many click stops, so you can actually choose, the right size system. Also, we have in the popular terabyte ranges, we have multiple core selections. So you can choose the right one for OLTP or OLAP or for dev test or TDI V5 certifications. And then on the flip side, remember, was the economics, the cloud economics. And what we again realized there is all the elasticity and snoozing of systems and spin up, spin down as you need it are the benefits that you have for your dev test systems, your surround systems, your landscapes, and we support that very well, even with things like Llama integration and inbuilt tools telling you where you can save money. On the other hand, you can't shrink, let's say, your database. The database is the database, whether it is, running at 100% CPU or 10% CPU. So that's where our customers typically want to benefit from 3-year or 1-year commitment. If on a 3-year commitment, they have as much as 60 to 70% discounts. And this is kind of the combination of cloud economics that come into play. Talking a bit about security. So on the security side, as I said, the debate is over, but the bar is rising. So we've got customers who are from the finance industry or pharmaceutical industry and so on. So the bar keeps going up. So, and we take this very, very seriously. So Azure, Microsoft spends about $1 billion a year just around security. And that basically makes it clear that it's almost impossible to have that on-prem. And then, of course, agility. So there are agility also means flexibility. So all the choices that you have are also important here. So first one, in terms of operational agility, we support, as you know, the whole range of database types, Oracle, DB2, SQL, HANA, and so on. And you have, and operating systems, so Windows, Linux, Red Hat, and SUSE. So that kind of gives you that flex. The next thing, of course, is you want flexibility in developing applications surrounding here. And then, you have on-demand access to a wide marketplace of appliances and tools, open source frameworks, and so on. Also, for your compute, you've got a wide choice of everything from serverless, batch processing, containers, service fabrics, VMs, scale sets, and now bare metal. So all of that is available in your compute. And then similarly for data, you've got IoT, analytics, Cortana, and AI kind of platforms to very, very quickly put together the solutions you want. Even experiment, try. If it doesn't work, you can move on to do the next thing, which is almost impossible doing it on-prem. And then in terms of other operational agility, it's a very simple thing, but the biggest thing people find is teams are not waiting for an environment. They can spin it up on demand to do some development and other projects, which had been the case on-prem. Now a little bit about HADR or business continuity. So just to be clear, all the features that you're familiar with today, we support. But then there are some additional purpose-built features that have to be clear here. So the first one, of course, is HA. We do it allow you to do HSR replication, but we also give you a quorum device so that you can set it up with automatic failover using OS clustering. This is not available in other clouds. Similarly, for scale out, we put it on a shared store for our large instances, and as a result, you can have automatic host failover, and that is not available in other clouds. And then inbuilt into our product, we have ability to take full consistent snapshots of your databases, however large they are, in seconds. So you can set up policies to take full snapshots every 4 hours for 2 days, and then dailies for 2 weeks, let's say. And this way you can very, very quickly have a point-in-time recovery. We also, inbuilt into the system, we mirror this thing to your DR site, so you have access to those snapshots even on the far end. So all of that is just part of our overall solution. But of course, you can take backups and archives out of this configuration here and store it in cheaper blob stores in Azure using your standard other means. All of that is supported. And then many of our customers are global. They have a distributed, maybe an SAP estate, and they have operations and customers and employees around the world. So with our investments in 50 regions, 140 countries, especially this 1,500 Meet Me points by which you can connect into Azure, allows you now to have that distribution and still not have to worry about configuring a big global network for making these connections. All you need to do is get to your closest Meet Me point, which is in 1,500 cities of the world, and from there be able to connect anything to anything. So that's a big advantage. And then, of course, as you think about how are you going to run it on a day-to-day basis, we will allow you to use your current tools like Solution Manager, and we also have Llama integration for automation. But we also have a whole bunch of born-in-the-cloud management services that will work both on-prem as well as in the cloud, Linux and Windows, to do things like security management using our security center, or protection using Azure Backup, or monitoring using Azure Monitoring, governance using our policies in ARM, and so on. So all of these are available, again, on demand in the cloud for a kind of your next generation management of your SAP estate. With that, I would like to hand this over to Anand Rawal. I've had a great experience a year and a half ago working with him as he was bringing in his first mission-critical large installation into Azure. Anand, take over.
Thanks, Ashman. Great stuff and very exciting to hear the momentum that's continuing to build with Azure. Hello, everyone. My name is Anand Raval, and I'm a Senior Manager in Accenture's Digital SAP Analytics practice, and I'm currently the Delivery Lead for SAP Cloud Initiatives in Accenture's internal IT organization, which we call CIO. I'm really excited to be here today to tell you about the work we've been doing with Microsoft and SAP in Azure. Before I get started, here are a few facts about Accenture. As I'm sure you all know, we are one of the world's largest consulting firms. We have significant global client and employee scale with annual revenue of almost $35 billion. So given our breadth and scope of business, it's critical we have the technology in place to run our own business, to ensure we can support our organization and our clients. So how do we do this? We do this by leveraging the platform economy. And in fact, 88% of Accenture applications are supported by the platform economy. We leverage Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services for our cloud computing. We leverage Microsoft 365 for our business applications and internal communications. And we run SAP for our ERP, HR, and procurement. Now, behind the scenes, it's absolutely critical to ensure our systems are fortified and have the capacity to support our growing business. For network, we run almost 800 gigabytes of network capacity, and we have over 9,000 wireless access points. To sustain our business analytics, we have over 44 terabytes of enterprise data, and we complement that with 171 dashboards and applications, and 22 artificial intelligence models, and 75 predictive models throughout our organization and our business. Specifically in the cloud, we manage over 13,000 virtual machines, 10,000 operating system instances, ranging from Windows to Linux to Red Hat, etc., and over 4,000 servers in our internal private cloud. Now, by running in the cloud, we estimate we have about $11.5 million in hosting savings, which is tremendous. And we continue to operate with a cloud-first mentality, meaning all new applications are expected to be delivered in the cloud, and existing applications have a roadmap to the cloud. Currently, we are at 88% of applications in the cloud, and we have a target to be at 90% by the end of 2018. And we absolutely believe we will achieve this. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about our SAP footprint. You all know us as one of SAP's largest system integration partners, but we also leverage SAP for our global ERP, and we've done so since 2004. We use it for core finance and human resources. Our principles behind SAP are process standardization, single global instance, standard and integrated master data, and limited core modifications. And we run our environment with a global team with primary locations in Argentina, India, and Spain. From a usage perspective, we operate in over 100 countries. We have 470 companies now part of our environment via acquisitions over the various years. And we integrate our SAP environment with 300 other global systems. Our current monthly financial close cycle clocks in at 2 to 3 days for pre-close and 5 to 6 days for full close. And we extend that timing during quarter and fiscal year end cycles. Now, from a system perspective, our primary SAP platform is S4 HANA version 1610, which we just upgraded to as a massive brownfield initiative a few weeks back in March, and we're currently in the stabilization phase. In S4, we use the SAP core finance modules in addition to HR, org management, and skills. At this time, this platform is still hosted on-premise, but we're building out our roadmap to migrate it to the Azure cloud over the next year. In addition to S4, we also leverage SAP Business Warehouse as our financial reporting and forecasting platform, as well as SAP BPC for global financial consolidations. We run this in Microsoft Azure, and that's the piece I'm going to tell you about next. So we started the project in 2016, and it was the largest initiative we had in Accenture CIO at the time. At the time, we were still running BW on-premise on a SQL database with SAP Business Warehouse Accelerator on top for performance. However, we saw that this architecture could no longer sustain our growing business and we first made a decision to migrate our database to HANA, and then our leadership made a call to also take the first major step in migrating our SAP platform to the cloud. Our intended benefits were increased agility, better user experience, more closed headroom, better security, increased stability, and alignment with our overall roadmap. To accomplish this task, we had 8 major scope items to complete. First and foremost was this hosting migration from on-premise to the Azure cloud. Second was the migration of our database from Microsoft SQL to SAP HANA. So previously we were about 7 terabytes uncompressed data on SQL, and as part of our migration we then achieved about 3.5 terabytes compressed given the HANA compression that we achieved. In addition to the migration of database, we also did the Unicode conversion, which is a prerequisite for going to SAP HANA. We also wanted to take the opportunity to do an application upgrade and make sure we were running the latest applications for BW, so into version 7.5, and BPC version 10.1. Once these technical components were done, we had to go through the optimization and remediation, primarily due to the nature of the migration to HANA, as well as the application upgrade, so ensuring all of our code and data flows were correctly addressed. Once this piece was done, then we went through a rigorous testing cycle. So essentially, when we do a major initiative such as this, we go through 3 full month-end financial close cycles to ensure that the system can be successful and will be ready for the cutover. We also look at things such as performance, functionality, etc. We also delivered one piece of new functionality for the business called service group reporting, which is something very critical to the business that they had wanted for some time, but on our previous platform we couldn't deliver that given it just didn't have the capacity. However, with the new upgraded platform to HANA and Azure, we were able to deliver this, and that's been a huge success for the business. And then finally, we had the stabilization to ensure that everything that we had done was operating successfully and was stable and able to meet the business requirements. Now, as you can see, we went live to accomplish this task. We had 6 months to do this. So to change every single layer of our primary financial reporting platform in a 6-month span was pretty monumental. And as you can imagine, we had our share of challenges and lessons learned. Some key things I would share with you. Number 1 is top leadership alignment. You want to ensure that your leadership from a technical perspective, from a business perspective is aligned, and then also alignment with your cloud provider. So in our case, when we kicked off our initiative, our top leadership immediately went to Seattle to meet with the Microsoft leadership team to ensure that everyone understood each other's common goals and had alignment around how we would deliver the project together. Second thing that I would also mention to you all is network architecture. Doing something at this scale with all the different network components, if you think about our scenario where we had our primary source environment at the time Suite on HANA on-premise going to now BW in the cloud, certainly a big network component. So you need to make sure you have the right network architecture all throughout your landscape. The other piece is your cloud vendor support. In our case, Microsoft was very closely aligned with us once we went live and in preparation for our go live to ensure that they were there ready to support us through stabilization, making sure they had all high priority tickets and events managed early, and they knew when critical cycles were coming up for us so that they could be ready to support us. And the other thing I would also share as a lesson learned was operations readiness. So to make sure that your operations team understands how to run your new environment in the cloud now. So we went through several months of knowledge transfer and transition to ensure our team was ready to go. Now, we've been live for a little over a year now, and the value of going to HANA and in Azure has been tremendous for our business and our technical organization. We've achieved every single value proposition that we went into the project with. From an agility perspective, we see a 5-week reduction in lead time to deliver new HANA environments compared to our previous hosting provider. That's huge. From a user experience, Our users are experiencing 70% faster management, forecasting, and consolidation reporting over a world-class BW system. Close headroom. We see 38% performance improvement on month-end close processing, creating headroom for 50% growth. We see 70% faster data broadcasting to downstream applications. This has been a tremendous win for our business because this, in conjunction with the new S4 upgrade, has opened the door for our business to now look at our overall close playbooks and try to see how we can condense our cycles, kind of thus freeing them up to look at more other aspects of the business. So that's been a huge win for the overall organization. From a security perspective, our ERP security is now further fortified with this new hosting architecture. We have a secure SAP HANA agile delivery governance enabled as well. From a production stability perspective, previously on our old platform, we used to encounter significant performance issues during critical month-end cycles, and that used to take a lot of teamwork from the operations in the business to try to overcome that. Now in the new platform, we don't see those issues anymore. In the last year since being live, we haven't seen one major critical production issue that's caused any impact to our business during any critical cycle. And then also roadmap. So this has laid the foundation for S4 HANA to go to Azure, as well as we start to look at BW for HANA, we now have a platform where we can easily transition to that new application. And also this has enabled digital integration with future CIO and ecosystems. Now, given everything we've done in the last year, we're still not done. We still have work to do. So I want to at least walk you through a few of the key milestones of where we've been over the last year and where we intend to go. So again, we went live last March, so March of 2017. That was followed by a period of stabilization and ensuring that everything was running smoothly. That culminated in our first fiscal year end on the new platform, which occurred in September of 2017. And then last summer, as we were still stabilizing the environment, what we did was we kicked off an M-Series proof of concept. And so for those of you who are not familiar with that, M-Series is the next generation of Azure where Microsoft then enables you to not only virtualize your application layer, but also now virtualize your HANA database. So very cool stuff, and with giving you further ability for agility and scalability. It just so happened that we were running that proof of concept when our S4 project also ran into an issue where they needed a new test environment quickly. So we were actually luckily able to use that M-Series environment to run a very critical financial impact test for S4. It's a huge win not only for the S4 project, but then also for our overall cloud program to ensure that we now have the next steps for M-Series ready to go. That's where we sit today now. So we're actually in the process of finalizing our roadmap for migration to the M-Series. We absolutely are going to get our S4 environment to M-Series over the next year, and we are looking at how we can potentially even start to migrate some of our BW to that newer next generation. So with that, I'd like to close and thank you all for listening to our exciting journey. Really cool stuff, and we're excited for what we've delivered and where we're going. You'll see some links to some more information around what we do and how we do it in the PDF that's shared as part of this webinar. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition this back to Ashwin to take us through next steps. Thanks all.
Thanks, Anand. So in terms of overall conclusions and recommendations, we'll of course definitely take your questions right after this. But overall, just to summarize, we went through the options, the pros and cons, kind of a deep dive on our product, and really in terms of the next call to action, I would say call your Microsoft account exec and set up architecture design session, which will take all the things that we've heard about, but then put it in the form that makes sense to you for your environment. And that will probably take a half a day to a day to get to an end state, sizing, pricing, topology, architecture, kind of an end result that you can have written down and be able to then internally discuss. And then if there is a more complex conversation, which is if you have multiple phases of migration over a long period of time that you need, what does those stages look like, will require even a deeper conversation, which may be a 1 or 2 day workshop. So we have people out in the field who can do this. And I'll answer any of the detailed questions. Some of them may be even roadmappy, if you've got requirements for sizes that may still be upcoming. So thank you. Let's get to the questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Excellent presentations. Before we go to our audience Q&A, though, we'd like to just remind the audience that this is a part of a series of webinars, and our next one is coming up in May 8th. And so we're going to push out a link here where you can register for not only this session, but for the others. And so we want you to check that out. And please register for this one or the previous one and the upcoming one. Also want to push out a survey to our audience to please fill out a feedback form survey and give us your feedback on what you thought of today's event. And now on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box in the bottom left of the console and press the Submit Question button. And we do have a number of great questions, so let's get started here. First off, we have one from Terry, who wants to know, is there an option for HANA on Azure in the Canadian Azure data centers?
Yes. So currently we have on a roadmap delivery of M series up to 4 terabytes in Canada, 2 regions in Canada for sometime this calendar year, later this calendar year.
Okay, thank you. Rajesh has a question here. How does SAP versions out of maintenance work in Azure if we have to maintain legacy systems in Azure just for future audits?
Yes, good question. This is a little bit of a longer conversation, but overall, we have a couple of customers trying to do exactly this, and they use a combination of archivals of full databases into Azure blob stores and even cold storage for many, many years. Plus, they archive away the full VMs, including the HANA installations. And then there is some additional further management to be able to pick the right ones to bring it up for audit, and then to fence it, because if you start running an old copy of the operating system in HANA 6 years from now, you may want further protection around it. So it's more of a consulting conversation, but the underpinning technologies are available.
Okay, thank you. Vincent has a question here. I understand HA pairs pair SLAs, but why are there no SLAs for scale out in the cloud? Our production environment needs that.
Yes, so good question. So for an HA pair, we give you an SLA of 99.99 for the large instances. When it gets to a scale out, you have an N plus M kind of a configuration that we support, as I said. And so to calculate the SLA of your overall configuration, it depends on the N and the M. We can give you how to calculate that. But for that, you will need a single node SLA, and that's what we provide. We provide a single node SLA both in large instances and in VMs, and this is not something you can do in other clouds. So you will be able to actually get very, very close to 4 nines, even on a scale-out configuration, at a lower cost, because you only have 1 spare or 2 spares.
Great, thank you. Anand, Jennifer wants to know, how do you manage monitoring in your SAP landscape?
Sure. From a monitoring perspective, I think the way you should all look at monitoring is when you go to the cloud, right, so nothing changes from a monitoring perspective for your SAP application. You're still going to have all your standard SAP internal application that your basis team can consistently run. What changes is your hosting side and the fact that you need to now monitor your database and your VMs, et cetera. So the way we do it on our side is, we have the Azure portal, which you would also have. And in there, you have a whole slew of metrics that come out across all layers of the landscape, ranging from the database through your VMs, your network, et cetera. So there are things that are standard out-of-the-box metrics, and there's things that you can also customize. And it's also growing, too. Like even, as we speak, we're working with Microsoft to enable new metrics. So really cool stuff, and it's just, there's some training that your environment delivery team will need to understand in terms of how to understand those metrics, but lots of tools at your disposal via the portal and internal metrics.
Okay, thanks. A couple of quick ones we can squeeze in here. One from Bala. Do you have any pilot programs which would help the customer try to explore SAP HANA Cloud migration, and what kind of support is available on the same?
So yes, first, if you're doing a pilot kind of a project, again, work with our field. But we have a bunch of features that allow you to do this migration in terms of DMO if you're going from one DB to another, or just a backup restore, or HSR if you have a very short cutover window. So we can kind of walk you through these different methods for trying this out.
Okay, great. And then Anand, one last question here. Let's see. Dennis wants to know, you run S4 on-premise and BW in the cloud, but can you describe how to do that? Did that with data downloads and transfers?
Yes, that was probably one of the biggest topics for us as we made this decision, because we did have a concern initially of having our primary source environment on-premise and our BW environment in the cloud, and having to run the types of loads and that we'd have to do during peak hours. So the good thing for us is we already, the way we look at Azure or any cloud provider is just not as its own unique, separate instance, but it's just an extension of our data centers. So Azure is just another data center for us, and we already had the pipes and the bandwidth created and express routes between our on-premise and Azure. So, we had a lot of testing. We ensured that we were aligned with our network architects going in to ensure that with this new workload coming into those pipes, it was sustainable. But given the appropriate tuning and attention, it was not an issue for us. And so now it's a non-event, and we've seen no performance degradation. In fact, we've seen improvement. So it's been totally great.
Okay. Well, thank you. Excellent presentation and Q&A, gentlemen. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this session. So if we didn't get to your question during our live broadcast, someone will follow up with you over the next few business days. And again, a reminder to check out our upcoming webcast. There's a link here for some more information. We want to thank you all for attending today's webinar, An IT Leader's Perspective on IT Transformation, Migrating SAP Systems to the Cloud, hosted by SAP Insider, presented by Microsoft. Shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder so you can access this presentation on demand. And on behalf of our guest, Ashvin Svangi, Principal Program Manager, R&D Compute with Microsoft, and Anand Raval, Senior Manager, SAP Analytics with Accenture Digital, we want to thank you for your time, and have a great day.